I am here with my new friend, Jimmy Adams. Jimmy, happy Sunday, my friend. How are you?
Nate, I'm so good. Thank you. Happy Sunday.
It's Pride Month. It's Sunday. It's beautiful outside. What more could we ask for, right?
We are living it up. Yeah.
And this has sort of been a long time coming. So I feel like I'm excited to hear your story. I'm excited to chat. So I kind of just like to jump in and invite you to answer some kind of introductory questions, and then we'll
Yeah.
kind of just see where the conversation takes us. But I usually like to start with, when was your last drink or drug, and why was it that day in particular?
Oh, such a good question. I love this one. So my last drink, though not drug was like a few days prior. My last drink was July 29th, 2016. So, coming up, knock on wood here, coming up
Yeah.
on 6 years, which is just absolutely unbelievable. It was that day in particular, and that time, 1 p.m. It was that day because I'll always remember that. And the last drink that I had in the car going into detox, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
as we do. I even tried, pushing it back. Like they called and they're like, okay, uh, you know, 1 o'clock, be here, ready for check-in. And I'd, been on a wait list to get into this treatment program for, a couple days, like not long, just 5 days, calling them every day. And they're
Yeah.
like, "Are you still
Yeah.
drinking?" I'm like, I
Of
am. I am.
course.
I'm absolutely still drinking. Don't ask me how much. I don't remember, but I
Right.
sure am. Um, so I had my last drink in my car and showed up to this detox center here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where I'm from. And like wasn't that drunk, right? I was probably pretty drunk. I like left my car in a parking structure with no thought of what would happen to it. I had to call my family later and be like, could you guys pick up my car, because I think I'm going to
Yeah.
be here longer than 2 days.
Yeah.
This was not as short a stay as I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And just leading up to that, it was a painful a few years, certainly a painful couple of weeks. That last week of July, while now a kind of joyous moment in my life each year, then it was kind of dark. I have a late July birthday, so I celebrated really hard. That year, 2016, was gently, not so gently asked to leave my job by my employer, and then as luck would have it, I knew the right people to get in contact with and say, "Hey, you seem to be doing pretty well, and from what I remember, you're sober. What advice do you have? Where should I go? What should I do? I'm kind of like hopeless here." So, yeah, that's it. That was the last day, July 29th, 2016.
Nice. Well, I I am currently in my sixth year of recovery,
Oh,
coming up on seven. I was asked to leave a job as well. I feel like we've got a lot of things that we can touch on and relate to one another. So leading up to that, I guess, how, looking back, how do you see your addiction sort of taking over those portions of your life, and have you identified things that contributed specifically to, in the
mm,
work that we do, been
yeah.
able to look back and identify some of those things?
Yeah, some kind of major life events, contributed to this. And, that was a result of me not knowing how to be healthy, how to do the internal work. So, first was a move to college, right? That 18-year-old me
Yes.
who had never had a drink before, believe it or not. First weekend in college, I discovered alcohol and I was like,
Mm,
whoa, this is amazing. This is, so
yeah.
much fun. We know we know that feeling. So I discovered that, and instantly was, as they say, off to the races. Like instantly was like, oh, I could totally black out every weekend,
Yeah.
which I pretty much did.
Proceeded to
Um,
do, right?
right, just no easing into things. So that transition into being a young adult, not having so much structure, those are scary big transitions for any of us. And as I was discovering that, okay, substances are pretty fun, in this chapter. Like
Yeah.
I was ready to go. So that, and then, I was not a very good college student. I was at a great school here in Michigan, the University of Michigan, and who knows why they let me in? I have no idea.
Yeah.
But they certainly let me out a couple of times. They certainly said, you've got some things to work on here,
Yeah. Yeah.
and your academic performance is suffering. So each of those times that I was suspended, I took that as an opportunity to just go a little bit deeper, right? To go a little bit darker. Pema Chodron's quote, and I'll probably get it wrong here, but only to the extent that we experience annihilation over and over again can that which is indestructible within us be found.
Mm.
I heard that 10 years ago, when I was in my 20s, and that really stuck.
Yeah.
I was ready to experience that annihilation, that ripping apart, experiencing, some contrast, some adversity that I hadn't before. So, that, and then just this other significant event of getting in a bike accident, and you can bet that I was in a bike accident because I was drunk biking, getting in a bike accident and having this kind of traumatic moment, having a fractured skull and a whole bunch of other wild things of hitting the pavement. Like, my go-to after that was to drink a bit more, to to use that time to kind of wallow in my misery. So
Yeah.
those were big ones. And then of course there's always the contributing moments of breakups and failed romances, and me being messy. But those were two big moments. And then as I discovered uh, drugs a little bit later in my drinking and using career, I used that also as an opportunity to discover some things that I probably didn't need to discover,
Right.
and
Right.
and dive into with myself, and explore some darker elements of myself. But I think that was sort of well underway for a few years. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. So I did an inpatient treatment
Mm,
program as well, and it was a state-run facility. I was going to this place not against my will, but definitely at the urging of
mm,
some of my family and friends.
yeah.
And I kicking and screaming is probably an exaggeration, but I was going into this experience very close-minded, and sort of having the foresight that I wouldn't have anything in common with these people, that
Mm,
my addiction was not as bad as theirs. There were people coming from, directly from the corrections department. There were
mm,
homeless people and IV drug users. And, my life is not as bad as these people. And I walked out of those doors after forming some of the closest bonds that I have ever in my
yeah.
life, and having some of the closest relationships with individuals that I, in fact, have the most in common with. So
Mm,
I wonder if you could talk a bit about
mm.
your treatment experience, and not that it was similar to mine, but how you felt when you walked out of those doors as well.
I was terrified walking out of the doors because I couldn't trust myself, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that was after, let's see, 3 weeks. I was in this detox for 3 weeks, and then moved on to a transitional housing program for 9 months. And when I was going in, I had a strangely open mind. I'm not sure what gift that was, but I was walking in and I was like, okay, I don't really know what to expect. Again, I was like, maybe a day, 2 days, 5 days max. It's like, I think I read on the website, like 5 days max. Turns out that's like 5 days, and then you go to like a 3 month treatment, right?
Yeah, right.
I missed that part. Um, but I was going in not sure, not having tried getting sober before, and certainly not working any kind of program of recovery. And coming out of that, I was surrounded by support, right? Folks who, just like you said, I wasn't sure what I had in common with them. Um, and then I was amazed that there's this whole community, right? There's this whole group of people, and that's who the people who were, smoking cigarettes outside of the church at
Yes.
7:30 on Friday night. Oh, that's who they are. That's what they're doing here. Because then I was one of them.
Right.
So, I was lucky enough to be in a program that required support and required that we get folks to be of service to us, to pick us up from that center and take us out to a meeting, 3 of them a day, right?
Yeah.
So I had my little red book of phone numbers that I knew I could get in touch with anyone um, at any time, and I was mostly shocked, and it took some time for the shock to wear off. I was like, wow, these folks are living these happy, abundant, bright, kind of shiny lives that, when they share their stories, I couldn't believe that was them, that was their history. And then eventually, you know, I'm I was grateful to, become one of those people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said you were a little
Mm.
terrified to leave. I think that
Oh
brings up
yeah.
a great point because, we learn these tools and tactics while being sort of secluded, right, from the
Hmm.
real world. And then the
Right.
real work begins after we leave that security. So, what were, if we have listeners who are new to recovery,
Hmm.
I know that we have listeners who are currently, in a facility or in treatment programs. So, what are some of the biggest takeaways that you walked out of those doors with, or that you sort of transitioned back into reality with, that we can share with them today?
Yeah. Oh, I can't overemphasize the importance of diving into that network, connecting with supports, w- walking out of those doors and going to pack up my apartment. I was giving up this beautiful apartment that I was like, I can't be trusted here.
Right.
Like, no, take the keys. So, on that drive, it was a 12-minute drive. I think I called probably 3 people, right? And I was just like, hey, listen, I'm going here. And frankly, I don't even remember what I might find. I
Mm,
think I cleared everything out,
it's
but
a good point.
I
Yeah.
right. I was
Re-
like, I'm going back.
returning to that toxic environment, right?
Oh,
Can
yeah,
someone be there prior to you getting home? Can someone go home with you?
right.
Especially being so fresh. That's a great point.
Yeah, that was it. So yeah, I had folks show up with me, and I made a quick pack and put everything in storage, and then at the advice of others, I think that was one of the saving graces was that I was open to the advice of others. Not that everybody had great things to say, or would I exactly follow that route again, but I was leaning into I was practicing a program of recovery in AA. So I was leaning into what my sponsor said. And, when
Yeah.
they said, give up your apartment, I said, sure, why not? Let's see. Because obviously this isn't gonna work out if I'm trying to run the show here. And we regain that agency. We regain our sense of confidence in ourselves to make sound decisions eventually. But
Right.
3 weeks in, nope,
Mm-mm.
I was not about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My decisions got me here. So I'll take
Right.
your advice on that one.
Yeah, it was painful enough, and rewarding and exciting, and I grew so much in that time, but it was painful enough that I just didn't want to do it again. I didn't want to end up back there. Like, I'd seen folks leave and come back. I stayed
Yeah.
there 21 days, and I saw some people come back 3 times, and
Same.
I didn't want to be that. I knew that I had a higher vision, a higher purpose, and more for myself to do than that. And certainly that's their journey. And many of those folks are now in long-term recovery, and I'm so glad that they're around. Some of them aren't around at all, sadly, but
Yeah. Yeah.
we make it through in our own time. Yeah.
Right. So at what point in your recovery did you start to realize that this was perhaps something that you could turn into a career or turn
Hmm.
into something that could help other people, and not necessarily just on the recovery side of things, but more of a generalized coaching or a life
Yeah.
skills or coaching sort of side of things as well.
Oh, this is a fun one. All right, 3 years in,
Yeah.
I was preparing for this new event. I was with my then partner, and he was moving to Berlin for the year, and I was staying in Ann Arbor. So here we were going long distance. We needed so much intentionality. We
Yeah.
needed so much, trust and faith and confidence in each other, and honesty from and to each other. So, I did a major amount of self development there, and I'd been doing some some amounts of self development throughout, but not quite in the intense focused way that summer produced, right? So one of the books that I read, still one of my favorites, and one of my favorite like intro books to kind of self design, is "You Are a Badass" by Jen
Mhm.
Sincero.
Yeah.
Like, what a good,
So
like,
good.
smart, funny, kind of reads you for filth sometimes. You've read
Right.
you've read it, yeah?
Yes. Oh yeah, I love
Yeah.
it. Yes.
Oh, so I read that and I was like, I am strapped to a rocket ship. I feel like I
Yeah.
could accomplish anything. So I like a challenge. And I was like, well, then what am I going to accomplish? How do I want to be bold and authentic here? Because I've got this gift of clarity. So I can probably make anything that I want to make happen.
For sure.
And that was the first time that I really understood that at a intuitive level. So started, like, kind of dabbling. I was like, well, let's see how much more money I can make, and made a little bit more money. Let's see what kind of moves I can make in my career. And I kind of fast tracked a little bit. Like, I regained a lot of lost time,
Mm.
essentially. And set my sights high, was able to be pretty successful and pretty quickly in my then hospitality career, and begin growing teams and developing others through developing myself, growing as a leader. So in 2020, with just a little extra free time, my business was closed down. Restaurants weren't really weren't happening, except
Right.
for like a small takeout operation.
Yeah.
um, so, I started investing in myself as a coach and getting trained and using all that I learned in a program of recovery to influence, these sorts of methods for being of service to people, helping them see their potential. And then that's really what I ultimately do, is help cast that vision, see some greater potential, and then just go for it. Like, let's go. And having done one of the hardest things that I've ever done in my life, which is getting sober, everything after that is you know sometimes challenging, but like, if I could do that, I
Yeah.
really can endure anything. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yes, the hardest thing I've
Mm,
ever done, but
yeah.
also it's sort of you can look at it as, putting down the bottle was kind of just the first step in this amazing sort of new life or new process that we
Hmm.
can look at almost. I kind of look back at it as like this bird's eye view. Hindsight is
Hmm.
2020, of course, but like the things that we learn. I started my recovery journey in the rooms of a 12-step program as well, and the things that we learn there are more just about living a better life and being a better person and helping
Hmm.
others. It's like you put the bottle down and that's kind of the easy part, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Right.
I mean, not the easy, it's not
Yeah.
easy at all, but it's these other things that we sort of have to dig in deeper to
Yeah.
discover and to work on. But then we can in turn use those tools not
Mm,
only to help other people, but in other aspects of our life as well.
right.
Yeah. Beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So, where can people reach out, or if people are interested in working with you or learning more, how can they contact you?
Yeah. So the easiest way and probably quickest way to get in contact is Instagram. One of my favorite tools. And as I'm exploring Instagram, I'm learning more about it.
Yeah.
So my Instagram handle is at __Jimmy Adams. Website is the jimmyadams.com. The most obnoxious website I could probably have now. And I'm searching for a new domain, but that was all that was cheap. My name was apparently not cheap. Whoever's out there being
Holding on to
successful. Yeah, right.
it.
Yep. So
Love that.
so there, and then email hello@thejimmyadams.com.
Nice.
Yeah.
Couple things that we'll close with, but I like
Hmm.
for our listeners to have some tangibles or some takeaways
Mm,
if they are early in recovery. So I
mm,
know we kind of touched on this a bit earlier as we were walking out of our respective treatment programs, but
mhm.
what's just some advice, maybe not some tangibles or takeaways, but some advice or some pick me ups for people that may be down on themselves or having a rough go at it early in recovery?
One of my cornerstones, and this is a cornerstone in coaching, right? Which is that we are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. So keeping in mind that we're naturally creative, resourceful, and whole, we're able to find our way out of a tough situation. We're able to create things and opportunities for ourselves that maybe once were unavailable. And as a whole person out in the world, as a whole and healed and healing person out in the world, we have a much greater impact on those around us. We're able to show up for those who might need our help. And I think, kind of, if I could add like just one other little sprinkle of salt there, is showing up for others can mean a lot of different things, but the important part is showing up, being a support in some way, whatever way that is, seeing people outside of ourselves who might need some of our love, some of our attention, some of our pats on the back, and just say, hey, listen, you're just doing a great job, like that's it. And and for me, I was able to kind of make myself believe that, because it was hard at first. I was able to make myself believe that by taking the stance of like, I might want to skip out on a call or a meeting, or see a friend calling and say, not really right now, but they need me. I'll go to the occasional 12-step meeting, not even so much for myself, right? I'm going for
Yeah.
someone who is actually kind of like maybe even universally calling me. And we follow those leads. Sometimes we're like, I don't know why I'm here, I
Yeah.
don't know why I chose this one. Things all just kind of worked out, and here I am to be of service. And I think those are my two: remembering that we're creative, resourceful, whole, and that we can just show up and be of service, and that helps a whole lot. Yeah.
It sure does. Those are
Yeah.
two really good ones. Thanks for those.
Yeah.
I know we talked a little bit about getting back in the yoga studio today, but
Hmm.
what does your recovery practice look like today, or what things do you incorporate
Hmm.
into your your day to day or your recovery sort of routine?
Folks might not like to hear this, but I meditate every single day.
Yeah.
Easiest way to just get real and get deep with yourself, right? Like, took me a while. It took me a while to develop a practice. And frankly, my meditation sometimes isn't me sitting cross-legged on the floor with crystals and oming.
Right.
Sometimes I'm like listening to some Kanye, and I like that's like I'm
Yes.
moving around. I'm getting my body moving. So some kind of meditation in the morning. I have a morning routine, and I'm now like getting up at 5:30 in the morning, which for this alcoholic drug addict, like
Yes.
that's totally wild. Oh,
Right.
like, I
Right.
can't believe it sometimes. I drag myself to my morning coffee, and I'm like, who are you? Like, what
Yeah.
what happened to you? And we kind of like this version.
Yeah.
So meditation, lots of podcasts, listening for those tidbits that enrich my life that I can share with others. Moving my body, a yoga practice, which I got into pretty recently, about a year ago, after some years away. I was like too drunk to practice yoga at one
Yeah.
point. I wanted to, but I couldn't get myself to a studio and to the mat. So, growing our bodies and our relationship with our bodies and our care for our bodies, as someone who's, put his body through a whole lot of
Through
stuff,
hell, right?
right? Like,
Same.
like we know what it means to take care of it and to be healthy now. My health is a major priority. I talk openly these days about living with HIV and why it's so important for me to be healthy and take care of myself, because for a long time I wasn't, right?
Right,
So
right.
yeah, meditation, exploring all of the material around us, moving our bodies. That's it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of my favorite new questions, and I've
Mm,
been closing on this one recently, but in keeping with the sobriety diaries, if you had, or if you do make a diary entry today, specifically for June 5th, what would your
mm.
diary entry sound like for today?
I am living with and practicing so much gratitude everywhere that I look around me. And, that sounds like, I recognize that sometimes, like, not everything is perfect, right? I think that's what I'm kind of getting at. Is like,
Yeah.
I have so much gratitude for the people, the connections, the love that exists in my life. And the more that I feel into that, the more that I practice it, the more that I am looking out for opportunities for it, the greater it gets, the larger it gets, the more vibrant and colorful and rich my life gets. And that's a pretty cool thing.
It is cool. It's cool we get to do this. It's cool we get a second chance. And I think that we have to embrace that second chance. Sometimes
Hmm.
it's a third chance, but I think
Yeah.
recognizing that and embracing it's the most important.
Yeah. Can I ask you, what would
Yeah.
yours be about today?
My diary entry.
Yeah.
I have a close family member who is currently in inpatient treatment, and
Mm.
I got to visit them today and had the ability to share some of what we had already talked about, you and I, as
Yeah.
far as my experience with inpatient treatment. So, my diary entry, or my journal entry that I will probably write here shortly,
Mm.
will say a lot about gratitude and getting to share that with a close family member and being on the other side
Mm.
of it, and having the ability to look back and reflect on that time and how far I've come, and being able
Mm.
to share that knowledge with someone that I love. So, Jimmy, I thank you for your time today. And this crazy sort of online recovery world that
Mm.
we're both sort of a part of. I'm
Yeah.
super grateful for that as well. And I'm grateful that we connected, and
Yeah.
perhaps we can, touch base again in the future, or
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's do it, Nate.
let's do it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening today, friends. Hopefully you heard something that resonates with you. And if we help just one person, our job is done. Make sure you check out today's show notes for all of the information on today's episode and how to connect with our guests. You can find all things podcast related and subscribe to our show at thesobrietydiaries.com, youtube.com/Nate Kelly, where we upload today's video podcast, and on Instagram at the Sobriety Diaries Pod. Check back every Wednesday for new episodes with new stories to tell. But until then, try your best not to drink and be good to yourself. Bye, friends.